All right, hello everyone. We are the politics group, and we're doing our presentation on racial discrimination. I'm Varb.
I'm Luis. I'm Edgar.
I'm Andy.
All right, first, the 14th Amendment. The North and South fought a war that resulted in Northern victory thanks to their overpopulation in the North, industrial capabilities, and immigrants. The South lost the war because lack of personnel, lack of raw materials, and industrialization. After the war, Reconstruction began, which led to the formation of the 14th Amendment, which the Senate passed on June 8th, 1866, and then ratified 2 years later on July 9th, 1868. The 14th Amendment gave citizenship to African Americans who were free, and from thus forward, any person born in the United States was automatically guaranteed citizenship. It made it illegal for any state to abridge a person's life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Next slide. In this slide, we have a person who is protesting the Constitution and to repeal the 14th Amendment, which is low-key dumb because he repealed the 14th Amendment. Any person from there on who is born in the country will not be a citizen. Now we brought to you, bringing the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment was passed by Congress on February 26, 1869, and ratified on February 3rd, 1870. Proposed by radical Republicans and abolitionists who wanted to finally, once and for all, fulfill the promises made to free slaves. The 15th Amendment gave suffrage to all free men and prohibited government or states to deny citizens of voting based on color, race, or past conditions of servitude. And a major success it was considered a major success, but would later be challenged by southern states who would enact laws that made blacks and other races do tests in order to make them not able to vote, which led to the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And in this picture, we actually see free African Americans exercise their new right to vote.
Okay. So, for equal opportunity, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So in the 1960s, there was debate over who equal protection of the law applied to. And in 1963, John Kennedy wanted to clarify this, so he pushed Congress to make a civil rights bill to make it properly equal. So Kennedy was unfortunately assassinated, but most states did respect the idea that the same party should control power over the executive branch. So the next slide should cover that. Then the next law, I guess, that was passed was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This legislation prevents discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. It was signed by Lyndon Johnson, who became the next president, and this was the voting done for him because Kennedy was assassinated, and most states wanted the same party to maintain power over it. So this is the idea that the national consensus over equal rights, there was effort, everyone wanted it. Not everyone, but like the majority wanted there to be equal rights for minorities. So in 1965, the Voting Rights Act went through. On March 15, 1965, Lyndon Johnson addressed the country 1 week after Bloody Sunday, just simple massacre. So all Americans must have the privilege of citizenship regardless of race. That is what he said when he was addressing the country. And on August 6th, Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act because Congress listened to him, urging the necessity of the bill. So this bill banned the literacy tests and poll taxes and other tests that were used to prevent minorities from voting. It was a huge step towards racial equality because minorities that couldn't afford to pay the tax to vote or were discriminated against by not having enough education to vote were equaled out because they couldn't stop them from voting like that, especially in the South. And here's an image showing that even if they weren't like educated, they could vote now because, or well, it's showing that they're really not allowed to vote because they don't understand what the sign says. But like this is what was abolished.
Hello, my name is Edgar Rodriguez, and I'll be covering the next 2 slides. So to give a quick overview, the civil rights movement wasn't just one entire movement, but it was a long, lengthy process from the Civil War all the way to the 1960s. Now, one of the big contributing factors to why it was successful during the 1960s and after World War II was because of World War II itself. During World War II, many African Americans would rally behind the Double V campaign, which basically stated that they should have victory over fascism out in Europe and victory against racism here at home. Now, after World War II, one of the impactful court cases was Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. So this case was a series of court cases regarding segregation in public schools, and it was put into one court case during the Warren era. Now, the Supreme Court decided that racial segregation shouldn't be allowed in public schools, and it was one of the cornerstones in the civil rights movement. It tackled the recurring presence of separate but equal doctrine by Plessy versus Ferguson court case in 1896. A fun fact is that Oliver Brown, the plaintiff, his attorney was Thurgood Marshall, the head of the NAACP legal defense, and he also became the first African-American Supreme Court justice. Now on to the next slide. So another very important case was Loving v. Virginia in 1964. Now in this court case, Richard Loving and Mildred Jenner got married in DC, and after coming back to Virginia, they were charged for interracial marriage, which was illegal in that state. On behalf of Loving, a white man, the American Civil Liberty Union helped him appeal to the Supreme Court against these interracial marriage statutes. The Supreme Court, which was during the Warren era, supported Loving's case with the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause, and this case was considered one of the watershed moments in the dismantling of the final Jim Crow laws here in America. And on to the next person.
Okay, so I'm back at home now, and I'm going to start my slides now. So, relevant Supreme Court cases. Bowling v. Sharp, which held the Constitution's Fifth Amendment and guaranteed racial equality through its guarantee of liberty protected by due process. This happened on May 17th, 1954, which is the same day as Brown v. Board. So that's why it's not so well known, because that case basically overshadowed Bowling v. Sharp. Cooper v. Aaron, which happened after Little Rock 9. The Arkansas School Board resisted integration and requested a 30-month postponement, which is 2.5 years. Ultimately, the court held that it was unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause. Okay, and next case, Gamillion v. Lightfoot, which Alabama redrew the electoral district boundaries of Tuskegee, and essentially it just excluded all blacks from city limits. So the court found this violating the 15th Amendment because it denied equal representation. And more relevant cases, Griffin v. County School Board, where Prince Edward County refused to levy or collect school taxes and it shut down public schools. But the Prince Edward School Foundation was formed, which just provided education for white students. And ultimately, this was found violating the 14th Amendment, because it denied education based on race. Green v. School Board of New Kent County. So New Kent County implemented a freedom of choice plan where all students could choose which school they wanted to attend. And ultimately, no white students transferred to black schools, and only a handful of black students transferred to white schools. And the court found this not sufficient to bring a desegregated unitary school system. So Lucy v. Adams successfully established the right of all citizens to be accepted as students regardless of race or color at the University of Alabama. And yeah, these are references. So enjoy.